Right here, right? Does that work? All's well? Everybody can hear me? All right. Well, I'm going to get started. So, thanks for the introduction. You should have used the word awesome and amazing and handsome, but I'll forgive you just this time. The slight oversight. So, let's pray. Father, thank you for your peace. God, you're Lord. And you're Lord in this house, and it's a new day. And we believe you for great things today. You're going to show us the path towards the future. We believe that and receive your wisdom from your word in the name of Jesus. Everybody say amen. Amen. All right. So I've been praying about this message, been rolling through my heart for about 6 weeks now since I've been traveling around the country. And I've been hoping to share some things with you. And I wanted to do that today. So if you can, give me a moment. I'll turn on my computer and if I can figure out how to use it. All right. Okay. So what I wanted to talk about today is we're going to start out with, if everybody can turn to the book of Exodus. You guys got Bibles, right? Yeah. All right. Just a quiz. Now, before I start reading, I want to ask you guys a question. It's an important question, but I think it's one that you have to answer as a house. And since I'm part of the house, I get to answer it too. Who are you? Who are you, Eskdale? Who are you, House of Aaron? I think that's a question that needs to be answered. And it was answered and asked in the past, but it's a question that needs to be asked regularly. I think it's a question that needs to be asked again. So, as I've gone through the process of working towards trying to build, my wife and I have tried to build companies, one of the things that we always look at is, what is the business culture we're trying to produce in the companies we're building? And so, you have to ask that question and answer that question right up front. Because culture tends to slide. It goes different directions. It always tends to go towards the negative. It'll always move that direction because people get lazy. I mean, I tend to wake up a little later every day if I don't have a wife, which I do. See, she helps me. But I just wake up at noon every day. It'd be awesome. So I have to have someone who can come and say, hey, listen, no, we got to go to work. We got to go work out. We got to do what life demands of us. And so, so I have to deal with culture inside my own heart. Does that make sense? Now, culture in business is important because when I was talking with Kaya this morning, and this thing has been going through my heart, is this idea that the moment you let culture go a wrong direction, it's difficult to take it back. You can trim the tree a little bit here, a little bit there, and everybody kind of deals with it and hangs out with it. But you let it go far enough, and I've had to do this a few times in the company, where, I'll give you an example. I was starting a different company. I went over and we started a different office. I was hanging around in that office, and I just spent a lot of time building this other thing, and it was important that I did it, but I wasn't spending enough time in my first company that we had, and I came back and things were going well for a while, and then all of a sudden some numbers started, the finances started, and I was like, hey, we got to fix this. So I went over and get all the leaders, what's going on? All right, I got to talk to you guys. You're giving me reports and they're not jiving with the numbers. What's happening? And so lo and behold, we had some cancer growing inside the business, and it was a process for me to extract it. It took me about 6 months of pain, anguish, and everybody thought I was an awful person after that. It was Jeremiah's the worst boss. So you were a Christian, and you're supposed to be a Christian, and I'm like, you're terrible. Go find another job. So so I don't want to deal with you. And what was interesting is, we had all this dissension in the ranks, and I was like, what is going on? And they were blaming, pointing fingers at this, that, the other person. And lo and behold, it was the quiet little girl in the corner. She was lying and deceiving. She was like a wolf in sheep's clothing. So I brought her in and I fired her and I said, you got to go and I can't have you here. And so after, well, she didn't like me after that. I was a terrible person, I'm sure. But I was amazed at the peace that came over the entire business after we made those personnel changes. And it's built itself back up, back on a foundation with the right kind of culture. So I learned some lessons in that. One is that I can't let things go too far. I mean, I got to give people enough space to live and breathe, but I've got to be able to say, this is the standard, and we're not going past this. If you can't live with the standard, then you can't be part of the company. That's just the bottom line. And if I let it go too far, then it'll affect everything. It'll ruin everything else. So a little leaven leavens the whole lump. Okay? So you gotta make sure that and I know as a group, and so this is part of what I want to talk about, is as a group and as a church, is when you're deciding who you are. Every church has got its own thing. It's its own flavor. Every work has its own unique place in the kingdom. So I'm going to read something out of Exodus chapter 24. If you guys can, turn there with me, and we will get started with that. Okay, it's a very simple verse, but I want to just pull this out. In Exodus chapter 24, verse 1, and he, this is talking about the Lord, said unto Moses, come up unto the Lord, thou and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu and the 70 elders of Israel. Okay, so let me just talk about this for a second. You can look up at me. God is taking the leadership or a certain group, and he's saying, you come up a little higher. Okay? Now, we have to be careful about our vision, about our place, that we don't look at anyone else and say, your place isn't as important as our place. But we also need to be careful that we don't take and abdicate our place and our position because of what somebody else is doing. Oh, they're successful in what they're doing. Well, here's the problem is if an apple tree goes and tries to be an orange tree, you're going to fail every time. You're never going to produce fruit, right? You've got to be what you are. And so what God is saying to these leaders, he's talking to them, you come up higher. And then he said, and worship ye afar off. And Moses alone shall come up near the Lord. And they shall not come up nigh, neither shall the people go up with him. So God's separating people out. He's saying, okay, this crowd, you're going to stay down here. And you group, you get to come up here. And Moses, you get to come up here. See that? So I'm going to ask this question again and again. But who are you? Who are you, Estelle? What is your place in the kingdom? What's your purpose? And I will say this, and this is a word I believe is from the Lord, is that if you let go of your place, if you let go of your God-given position in the kingdom of God, the place that God's called you to, it doesn't matter how many programs and how many things you try, you'll never be able to gain back the success that you have when you say, this is who we are. You define who you are, and this is the standard of our house. Does that make sense? You've got to decide that. And so I just want to talk about a few things of, there's been some things rolling through my heart, but one of those things is holiness. Now, how many guys understand holiness? Anybody who here believes that they've got a good wrap around what it means to be holy? Does anybody know? All right, so I'm going to just dig into a few things here, and I want to talk about this because I believe that one of the foundation stones of this house is you're called to holiness. Do you guys believe that? You're called to holiness. And now there's some wonderful, beautiful things about holiness. Kind of I've been talking about this, but holiness is beauty. And let's go into the scripture. So Matthew chapter 5, verse 7 through 9. I'll read this for you. I'm going to roll through some scriptures. So if you can keep up with me, if you're a... Now, do you guys ever watch the Bible Scholar program where everybody has to come up with the answers really fast and they have to beat each other? So you never watch that on TV? Yeah, these guys know the Bible, I'm telling you. So if you're fast, you can keep up with me. Matthew chapter 5, verse 7 through 9 says, Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Now here's what I want to bring out here. Is holiness, and I think you guys would concur with this, it means to be separate. But it also means to be pure, right? So God is pure, He's holy. And so you look at something that's beautiful. I love that picture. You look at something that's beautiful, and the most beautiful thing you can picture, you look at that and say, it crosses towards holy. Holiness is extreme beauty. And here's the thing that's wonderful about purity of heart, is it allows you to see God. See, if somebody's got dirtiness and uncleanness all over their life, and they're filled with bitterness and resentment, they're not going to be able to see the presence of God. They can't experience the presence of God. I've noticed that in my own life when I've got problems, that I go into prayer and all I can think about is my problems. I can't get past all the muck to get past that and see the presence of God. And so holiness allows you to see God, to experience the presence of God. Now, Romans chapter 12, verse 1 says, Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in the view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not be conformed. I think that Paul is defining this. Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that then you may be able to test and approve what is God's will, His good and pleasing and perfect will. One of the things I've experienced in my own life is when I'm allowing the input of the world into my life, and my cleanness level kind of goes down a little bit, I can't hear God's voice. I can't hear His will. I'm like, God, what are you saying? But if I'm walking pure, now I'm going to talk about this for just a second, because I think it's important when we talk about holiness. Most people, when they talk about holiness, they think of behavior. It's important we get to this. So I grew up here, and I've been in church all my whole life, so I've seen this a lot. And one of the things that we do as Christians is we measure our holiness by our behavior. And we say, well, I'm more holy than that guy. And because I don't drink, and I don't smoke, and I don't chew, and I don't go out with them that do, right? You've heard that, right? So you measure your holiness by a standard that you came up with. Well, so see, we all do this. We always think, I think I'm doing pretty good, and you figure out what's on your to-do list, and you're like, that's my to-do list. But if there's something you're not doing, you just leave that one off the to-do list, because it's a little hard. So you're just going to go with the stuff you can do. And all humans are like that. We all do that. But here's the concern that I have is what that produces in us is a sense of self-righteousness. Oh, I worship on the Sabbath, not Sunday. Now, let me be careful with this. Okay, how many of you guys remember the Dark Ages? Were you guys there during the Dark Ages? Nobody was there? Okay. Was it a good memory for you? So let me tell you about the Dark Ages. So what happened during the Dark Ages, there was the plague. You guys remember the plague? You studied about the plague? The bubonic plague crashed through Europe and killed, huge numbers of people. And the thing about the plague is it spread like wildfire. People just died through the cities. And one of the things that happened during this time is they looked at the Jews, and the Jews weren't getting the plague. You remember that? And if you guys said, how are the Jews not getting the plague? And they were upset at them. And my understanding is there are a couple times where they'd persecute them because of this whole thing. They weren't getting the plague. But the thing was it boiled down later. They learned later is that the Jews weren't eating rats, and the other folks were eating rats. You were just hungry enough. You ate the rat, got the plague. So the thing was the law protected the Jewish people, and the other folks weren't. But here's the thing you have to understand about the law. The law isn't given so that you can be holier than somebody else. The law is given so that God can show you His love. Do you see that? So the law is for love. It's so that you can be protected for yourself. Do you see that? So when He says to do something in the law, that law isn't for you to become righteous. That law is so that God can get his help and his love towards you. Does that make sense? So we need to see the law through the prism of God's love for us, not so that we can beat somebody else up and say, we're better than you are. See, that's very important that we see it that way. And holiness is that way, because if you measure your holiness by how well you do X, Y, and Z, it'll always result in just an arrogant pride about you. And that's what we have to be very careful about, not taking it that way. So let's dig in this for a second. And we have to also understand what holiness gets us. What does holiness buy you? What do you get by receiving and walking in holiness? Who may ascend? And I'm going to read Psalms chapter 24, verse 3. It says, who may ascend to the hill of the Lord? Or who may stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul to an idol, nor sworn deceitfully, he shall receive blessing from the Lord and righteousness from God, the God of his salvation. And so holiness gets you some things. Now I'm talking about holiness as a group, and I'm talking about individually is important, but I'm also, I believe, as a prophetic word for the church, is the church has been called to holiness. This body's been called to be separate. And so one of the things I was going to also discuss is what kind of I talked about earlier too, is this idea of the Levites. Now how many of you guys know how, I'm going to give you a quiz, you all know this hopefully. How many tribes of Israel were there? 12, right? There was 14, it was 12, I remember now. So the Levites were one of those tribes, weren't they? Okay. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is what the Levites' responsibilities were. Let me see. I had it, and I left my place. Okay, here it is. City for Levites. There we go. Okay. Okay. Numbers chapter 35, verse 1 says, and the Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho, saying, command the children of Israel that they give the Levites cities to dwell in from the inheritance of their possession. You shall also give the Levites common land around the cities. They shall have the cities to dwell in, and their common land shall be for their cattle, for their herds, and for all their animals. For the common land of the cities which you will give, the Levites will extend from the wall of the city outwards 1,000 cubits all around you. And you shall measure outside the city of the east side 2,000 cubits, on the south 2,000 cubits, on the west 2,000 cubits, on the north 2,000 cubits, and the city shall be in the middle, and this shall belong to them as a common land for the cities. Now among the cities which you will give to Levites, you shall appoint 6 cities of refuge to which the manslayer may flee. And these shall you add 42 cities. Now, this thing about this idea of a manslayer city, this is fascinating. This is something I've been looking at for some time. So you guys understand the idea of a manslayer. So somebody kills somebody by accident, they get to run. They do some terrible thing, they get to run to the manslayer city and hang out until the high priest dies. It's sort of like the get out of jail free card. Like, oh my God, I just messed up. Go here, I go to the manslayer city. I'm ready to go. I'm going to go hide out for a while. So I think there's a few responsibilities of the Levites. Number one, the Levites, we'll go through this. The Levites were responsible to minister to the Lord. They were the priests. The priests came from the Levites. They ministered to the Lord. They also, another responsibility I believe, is they were to minister to the other tribes. To the other tribes. Now this is a part I want to dig into in just a minute. The Lord. Now we know that's true because the moment that Judah and Israel split and the Levites went all over to Judah, the Israel never came back to serve the Lord, did they? They never came back. It was the Levites' presence amongst the people that made the difference for them serving the Lord. The Levites are the ones who are responsible to bring the presence of God, not just to minister to the presence of God, but to minister the presence of God to people. Does that make sense? If the Levites were split from the people lost the presence of God, didn't they? So the next important thing that the Levites did is they had these cities where the manslayers could run to. So they were the receiver of the crazies, right? So all the crazies, you get to come on in. Come on. Every crazy man gets to roll into town, into our city, and we'll take care of you. So another thing, that's why we're all here. Hey, don't say that too loud. Some of us were part of that crowd, right? So another thing that's important that you understand, that the Levites had cities. Do you see that? They had a place that they could call their own home. But their inheritance, their primary inheritance was what? It was the Lord. Now, let me say this. Your inheritance, this place, is the presence of God. And this is the foundation of what I'm trying to get to is if you lose that focus, and if the culture moves away from that, then inevitably Estill will die. It'll die. It'll go some other place. It'll be something just like the world. It'll just be the next little town on the map. But if the presence of God is your inheritance from the youngest to the oldest, and that's why we're here. If you don't want to do that, maybe you need to go to another city. And that's okay. We're not going to beat anybody up, but that's what we are. And if that's kept, then you've got your inheritance stays the presence of God, then your responsibility can be fulfilled, which is to bring the presence of God to others, to other people in the communities, into the world. And I think that part's important too. If you just come to worship God, but you never got to help the other folks around you, then you'll be in big trouble too. Because if the Levites don't help the other children of Israel, then eventually it all turns bad, and that's not where we want to be anyway. So I think it's important to decide and to determine who you are. Who are you? And so let's talk about this. John 17:11 says, Jesus said, I am no longer in the world. He's talking to his disciples, and he said, but these are in the world, and I come to you. He's actually praying, Holy Father. It's one of the only times Jesus called the Father holy, Holy Father. Keep through your name those whom you have given to me, that they may be one as we are one. And I'm going to dig in here a little further. In 2 Corinthians 5:16 says, therefore from now on we regard no one according to the flesh, even though we have known Christ according to the flesh. Yet we know him thus no longer. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. Now all things are of God, who has reconciled us to himself through Jesus Christ and given us the ministry of reconciliation. So I want to just define this very important, because this is clear. This has become clear in my mind. Is number one, holiness isn't something we do. Holiness is a gift from God. It comes through the work of the cross that we receive in our hearts, and holiness is what you have on the inside of you. Now, you might have a Rembrandt picture on the wall, but if you slop mud on it, nobody will be able to tell it's a Rembrandt, but you got to get the mud off. Underneath the mud is still the masterpiece. Does that make sense? So holiness is not something that you get by doing something. Holiness is something that you express from your own nature because you're one with the Father. You're expressing it from your own nature, and you just got to get the world's information out of your eyes. You just got to stop looking at what they look at and eating what they eat and following what they follow. When I say eating what they eat, stop digesting their lies. Stop following their patterns. And if we get our eyes off of the televisions and on the radio and all the stuff they're feeding us, and we start separating ourselves back to the Father, and we start keeping them separate so that we can see and behold God clearly, then we'll have the power and the necessary, the presence of God to be able to go minister to them at the right time. So who are you? Who are you? And the next thing is, another thing, I want to just clarify here, is that you are holy, but that doesn't mean that the other Christian down the road isn't holy too. So holiness is different. Let me say this. It's a little different than culture. You are called to holiness, but some people are called to walk in a higher standard. They're called to come a little closer. Does that make sense? And some people are just different places in their walk. And so I want to bring in Jeremiah chapter 4:3 says, "For thus says the Lord to the men of Judah and Jerusalem, break up your fallow ground. Do not sow among them thorns. Circumcise yourselves to the Lord and take away the foreskins of your heart." If you're going to become the people that God's called you to be, you're going to have to make some decisions about who you are. And you have to make some decisions about what you want as a people. And those decisions have to be, I'm going to raise the standard, and this is what we're going to do as a house. And this is what we're going to be as a house. And as a community, you have something unique here. You can define those things. Most churches live in cities where they don't have any choices with that stuff, but you do. You can define, this is who we are. Now, my brother, he's a, you guys know Isaac, right? Anybody ever know Isaac? Isaac is a ranger. He's a special forces, he's an officer in the Army, but he went through special forces training. He told me about going through it one time, and it sounded like a bed of roses. It was awesome. I was like, why did you do that? That was terrible. So I'm like, how was it? He's like, well, if you really want to know what it's like, just don't sleep for a week and don't eat for a week and try to run around all day long. It's great. And so I was in the Air Force Academy, and I was sitting in, for some reason I was sitting in, it was a break or some period of time, and we were sitting in the cafeteria area, the mess hall, and there was this guy that had come in and was sitting there, and we started talking to him, and this guy he'd gotten washed out of the Special Forces, Air Force Special Forces, and he was there eating. And I'm like, what happened? He's like, well, I got stress fractures in both my legs. He's like, I'm like, what? You're doing? He's going through Special Forces training and got stress fractures in both. I mean, they run him like crazy. And well, let me digress. One of the things Isaac was saying is these guys are so tired when they're working out that they'll do PT, because they do PT all the time. And they'll run them in these, they get together and they're running together. And what happens is they'll turn a corner, and then invariably there's 2 or 3 guys that just keep running forward. They're totally asleep. They'll like run into the trees. They run. I'm like, how does that work? You're sleeping and running. They're so tired. They're just totally exhausted. But this guy had stress fractures because he had gone through Special Forces training. And I'm like, tell me that. He's like, oh yeah, it's like the 3rd time of day. He's gone to apply to be in Special Forces 3 times. And every time he's washed out because his legs had stress fractures. He broke his legs because he was running too much. And I find it so amazing how many of these guys, these meatheads, want to be in the Special Forces. And it's such a terrible experience. It's a terrible, I mean, there's no joy in it at all. And he's just dying to get in the Special Forces. And I went through some things in the Air Force Academy, but it was nothing like that. And I remember waking up in the morning. Okay, so I went there my first day, and I went to sleep after they had yelled at me and took all my clothes and shaved my head, and that was great. And I was laying down going, this isn't that bad. And I closed my eyes for a second, and the loudest revelry. So you know what revelry is? Revelry. Dun, 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 dun. They had a speaker. It had to be next to my ear. It was like somebody punched me in the face. It was the worst thing I've ever experienced. Screamed this revelry, and I felt like I slept 30 seconds. It was awful. I'm like, because they take away your watches, you have no idea what time it is. And so we're out there running. I'm like, oh God, this is the worst decision of my life. What did I do? And I was thinking, not everybody is going to go to the Special Forces. And it's okay. It's okay. But you know what? It's sure nice to have them when you need them, isn't it? So here's the thing about the special forces. The thing that makes, it's kind of a weird dichotomy. The thing that makes everybody want to be in the special forces is the fact that it's so hard to get in and to stay in, and people wash out. It's weird that the fact that it's so difficult, and it's made that way on purpose, that people become attracted to it. Now, kind of we were talking about earlier how when Estelle was first started, didn't people leave their houses and lands, and they left everything they knew, and they came and they sowed their lives into a place, and my dad was saying, Estelle's in the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of nowhere. Why did they do that? I mean, what was the purpose of sowing their lives here and their fortunes and everything they had to join the special forces of God? If we just lower the standard, or anybody, you know, we're just going to keep it down. We're going to be just like everybody else. That's not what we are. That's not what we are. We're something different. And I was listening to someone on I was watching the television one time, and they were talking about the churches in America, how the churches in America are filled with bigotry, and they were confronting Rick Warren. You guys know who Rick Warren is? They're confronting Rick Warren about this, and they said, don't you think that the church should accept all these different things, and just why do you have to be so contentious? And Rick Warren responded, he said, the church holding to a standard isn't the problem. The church thrives when it holds to a standard. In fact, the opposite is true. If the church lowers its standards, then it eventually dies, which is what's happened in Europe. You go into Europe, and most of the mainline denominations there, you can't tell the difference between what they believe and what the world believes. They just bought the whole thing. And the whole group is dying. The church thrives in a place of uncompromised truth. The church needs to be uncompromising and to not accept anything else but this standard. In fact, the higher the standard, the better and the stronger the presence of God will be. Well, that's hard because you end up cutting off some limbs here and there, and it hurts. But if you don't trim the tree, you'll lose the presence of God. You'll lose the most important part of the whole thing. If you can't make some decisions about who you are, you'll lose what mattered most. And so you have to decide that. We can't buy into what the world's doing, what the world's program is, not because we're holy or because we've received holiness from God, but because we want the presence of God in our lives, right? We want His glory in our lives. We want to be able to receive something from heaven and to be able to go give it to others. And we can't do that if we look like them, if we act like them, if we talk like them, and we do like them, and we watch like what they watch, and we follow along their patterns. You can't have the presence of God and have impurity at the same time. It's just not going to happen, because He's not going to hang out with you at the same time. You're going to have to make some decisions about your life, and you're going to have to come to a place of repentance. And so Jeremiah 4:3, let's look at this thing one more time. For thus says the Lord to the men of Judah and Jerusalem, break up your fallow ground, and do not sow among thorns. Circumcise yourselves to the Lord, and take away the foreskins of your heart. Now, I was reading a sermon by Charles Finney, and Charles Finney was a great revivalist. And when I was young, I always thought revival is something God did. And as I read Charles Finney's works, I realized that Charles Finney didn't think that at all. He decided that revival was something that people did. Revival is what you do. God's always in the revival business. He's always in the life-giving business. We have to make a decision. And in this verse, he pounded on this, says, you go break up the fallow ground. You go circumcise the foreskins of your heart. Make a choice to step up to the standard of God and start pulling and yanking out the influences of the world. I'll step on this because I'm just going to do it. You guys can forgive me later. So one of the things that I feel is a concern, and you guys need to obviously take this and roll with it, but one of the challenges of taking public money is they own you. Fair enough? Yeah. They own you. They own what you do, what you say, and how it works. And one of the challenges that you have, and it is one of the reasons why I believe that God wants to prosper His people, is so that they don't have to depend. And what, like Abraham said to these kings, says, no, I'm not going to take your stuff lest you say, God made me rich. No, you can't have that place in my life. I'm not going to take your stuff. God will prosper me on His own. Thank you very much. And so you have to be really careful when you take the world's stuff. They give it to you, but they clap you with handcuffs on the backside. And so one of the challenges, and I say this with even something as simple as a public school system, I believe that, and that's fine, but I believe that there's a season and there's a time, but we're coming to a place where we don't need anything from them. We've come out of that, and we can start sowing. Our own seeds in the community. I mean, why can't you offer free school to every person that walks in the door if you've got what it takes financially? I mean, why do you need the government stuff, right? Why do you need the government's help in any place, in any way, when you've got everything you need from God, right? God can provide for you. You don't need anybody else. So don't allow the influences of the world to strip you of your identity. Oh, that felt nice saying it. Came out, felt good. I liked it. So, all right, I can go home right there. So, one of the concerns I had, and this is my own little beef, so I'm going to just take it. One of the concerns I've had, because I grew up here, is that we were separated, but we didn't use the presence of God that we received enough to go capture and develop and minister and send and build and create new things. God, we weren't being the Levites, we were being the Levites over here. We were hiding. And it was just between us and God. Well, they were all dying and starving in the streets. They needed what we had. Now, maybe that's not true. I was a kid, and that's all I knew. I was hanging out in these chairs. Well, they weren't chairs back then, but I think it's important that the inheritance of the Levites is the presence of God. But the purpose of the Levites is to go minister to the rest of God's people. That's our purpose. That's our calling in life. If we're just in these chairs and we're not going out and being sent and doing things in the community and going to the nations of the earth, and we've lost our purpose and our calling as priests unto God, right? I mean, we've lost the whole point of this thing. We didn't come. How much time do I have? Am I running out of time? You're fine. All right, I'll quit. Just wave a flag at me. You're talking too much. One of the things that I think that happened, which is important that we remember, is that the community was formed partially because the Lord is coming back. How many of you guys believe Jesus is coming back? Do you believe that? Yes. Now, I think sometimes we forget that. Oh, He's not coming back anytime soon. I think you guys are just a little bit off on that subject. So, no, that's what some people think. But I believe that Jesus is not only come back. Let's just look at this. That 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 5 says, "But concerning the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I should write to you, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so comes as a thief in the night. So, for when they say peace and safety, then suddenly destruction comes upon them, as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, and so this day should overtake you as a thief. You are all sons of the light and sons of the day." Now, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, Paul talks about this all the time, or quite a bit at the end times, but I want to read this. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, if you can follow me, says, "Now, brethren, concerning the coming of the Lord, Jesus Christ, and our gathering together to him, we ask you not to be soon shaken in mind or troubled, either by spirit or by word or by letter, as if from us, as though the day of Christ had come. So let no one deceive you by any means, for that day," this is important. So Jesus is going to come back and we'll be caught up, we'll be gathered up together with him. This is talking about the rapture. You guys believe in the rapture? So I think it's very clear. Most people would accept that this is a rapture verse. Fair enough. We'll be gathered up together with him. Are you guys, who agrees with me on that? Talking about rapture there? Who does not know what I'm talking about? I mean, have no idea. What are you talking about? Just all right, I'll break this down for you guys who don't know. So Paul is talking about the Lord Jesus is going to be coming, because he says the coming of the Lord Jesus. That means Jesus is coming back, right? We're all in agreement there. And our gathering together to him. So he's going to come like lightning. It's going to flash from the east to west. And then we're going to be gathered together with him. So we all agreed on that, right? And so that's what Paul's talking about. And he says, "But let no one deceive you by any means, for that day," meaning that Jesus coming back and our being raptured, "will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." Now, who is that? Does anybody know what he's talking about? He's talking about the Antichrist. He's talking about the revealing of the Antichrist. So before Jesus comes back, it says, it's very clear. It says before Jesus comes back and we're raptured, the Antichrist is going to show up. I mean, that's exactly what I'm reading. Does that seems pretty clear in Scripture, right? So I want to read something else here. Mark 13, verse 13 says, "And then when Jesus went out to the temple, one of his disciples said to him, 'Teacher, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here?' And Jesus answered and said to him, 'Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone shall be left upon the other that should not be thrown down.' Now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, opposite the temple, Peter, James, and John, and Andrew asked him privately, saying, 'Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign when all these things will be fulfilled?' And Jesus answered them and began to say, 'Take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and will deceive many. But when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be troubled, for such things must happen. But the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines and troubles, and these are the beginnings of sorrows.'" Now, I heard about this verse all my life. I'm like, oh, it's getting really bad, so it's probably going to be the end times, right? It's getting really bad. But I want to tell you something. There's a greater sign at the end times, and things are getting really bad. So, and Jesus talked about it right here. "But watch out for yourselves, for they will deliver you up to councils, and you'll be beaten in synagogues, and you'll be brought before rulers and kings for my sake, for a testimony to them. But the gospel must first be preached to all the nations." Now look at that word "first" there. Go ahead and circle it if you got a pencil. Circle the word "first." First means it starts before all this stuff does. And then I looked, and I'm going to unpack that a little, that word "first" a little, this reaping for just a moment. In Revelation chapter 14:14, and says, "Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and on the cloud sat one like the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and on his hand a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, 'Thrust in your sickle and reap, for the time has come for you to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe.' And so he who sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped." Okay. The greatest sign in my belief, and I think I'm agreed in Scripture in this, the greatest sign of the end times isn't the things are getting really bad, so we have to go hide. The greatest sign of the end times is the harvest of the earth has come, and we are the workers of that harvest. And when the earth is reaped, I believe that I was driving one day, I was driving home, and I was praying about the end times, and the presence of God came over me, and the word Lord just started rolling through me, and God showed me how the church is not going to be running scared in the end times and trying to hide in the rocks away from the Antichrist. That's not going to be happening at all. It's going to be the exact opposite. We're going to be so victorious and we'll be conquering the earth. There will be such a harvest that they'll be so scared that all the folks that don't want to follow along are going to run to find somebody to help them out. We are going to be the conquerors. We're going to be the ones on top. Jesus is not going to come to the earth when he's finally defeated. Oh, we better save him at the very last minute. I mean, this is the defeatist mentality most of the church lives in. Oh, it's getting really bad. I hope Jesus comes back. Well, I thought he was a king. I thought he was the ruler. I mean, I thought he was supposed to be on top. I mean, why are we hiding when we have the glory of God in earthen vessels? Why aren't we out there and winning the lost and changing communities and moving things so they should be moved? I mean, why are we waiting around until Jesus shows up and saves us from the big bad Antichrist? I mean, that to me is the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life. Aren't you a child of God? I mean, the Scripture says that creation is yearning and is groaning for the manifestation of the sons of God. Oh, it's waiting for me. See, I show up and it goes, oh, you're here. Oh, you finally showed up. You bet. Come on, let's get busy. Move. And I start telling them what to do. See, I walk down the street. I walk down the street and there's some guy who's walking down the street and he's wearing a $4,000 suit and his shoes are, $800 shoes and he's just going to the bank because we're walking through New York. And I'm thinking to myself, that guy works for me. He works for me. Go get busy. Make some money because you're working for moi. See, you're the kings and the priests the earth has been waiting for. You've come to separate yourself to the presence of God. You've set yourself apart as special forces in God's kingdom. And not a bunch of pansies and wimps waiting for the Antichrist to show up. You guys have you set yourself apart for a purpose because he's coming. Isn't he coming? Yes. And he's coming, so we have a job to do. Now, I was praying about the other day where Paul said about hastening the coming of the Lord. You've ever read that? Where Paul talked about hastening the coming of the Lord. And I've always thought that's strange. I thought it was all about you coming. You can just show up anytime, right? No, but that's not the case. See, we have a part to play in the coming of the Lord, don't we? Yes. We've got to do our job before he's going to do his part, right? And our job is to go win the lost and to make disciples of all nations. All nations. And the moment that happens, then he can start wrapping this program up. Oh, it's going to be nice. It'll be good times. So if they come to persecute you, just laugh and enjoy yourself. It'll be awesome. Please don't hide. This place is not meant to be a hiding place. I'm going to say this. This is what I'm going to leave it. This place is not a hiding place. This place is a training place. This place is a preparation place. This place is not a place for you to come get away from the world. This is a place for us to get ready so the world can come to us and we can go to them. That's what it's for, right? This is for us to, I'm saying that again. We're not here to get away from the world. We're here to get away for the world. Okay? And, that felt nice too. So let's fight. I like to fight. I'm good at it. And so the devil runs scared when he sees me. And he ought to run scared when he sees every person here. And so one last thing before I go is, we need to get our eyes off of the troubles of the day and get our eyes on the victory that's coming. Okay? That we're getting. We're not waiting for God to give it to us. He's given us. We just got to go get our victory and we'll make steps appropriate to get it. And we're not going to focus on our troubles and our trials, because then the moment we look at the waves and the wind, we start to sink. We start to sink, right? So no more whining and crying and bawling and squalling. Now it's time for us to look at Jesus and say, you have victory for me. You have good things for me. And that's our inheritance. And that's what this is about. This place is about training and getting ready to rule. Amen? All right. All right, I'm done. Let me pray. Father, thank you for the word. Teach us Guide us. Help us go into this place of victory, this place of peace in your kingdom. God, help us come to a strong revelation about this house and what we're called to and what we're going to stand on and the standard we're going to receive. God, we receive that to our hearts in the name of Jesus. We'll accept nothing less in the name of Jesus. Amen. All right.